right. Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements. And this show is about faith, freedom, and free enterprise. And our goal here is to agree on something, even if we don't always agree on something. And if you like this episode, please share. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. For right now, hopefully we won't get canceled after this podcast because we've got such a controversial guest. and we're very excited to bring you a special guest today, Jon Condo, who has the distinguishing characteristic of being a former long snapper for the Oakland Raiders and also briefly for the San Francisco 49ers. I know I'm missing a team in there somewhere.
Falcons, right?
But
couple teams.
Couple teams, but Jon had an illustrious career, like long career. How many years were you in the NFL?
So I was part of 15 seasons.
Yeah.
So it was, my first year out of college was 2005. Started with the Dallas Cowboys. 2006. If you want me to get into it.
And you were a Terrapin, right?
Yeah, I was a Terrapin.
Okay, we'll overlook that maybe.
There's nothing wrong with being a Terrapin.
No.
Those that don't know, that's University
I spent a
of
summer there, and it's a very interesting place, College Park.
Hopefully you got to enjoy some crab cakes and some Old Bay seasoning.
I had to stay in the Alpha Phi house, which we had converted into an intern house as I was looking for a job on Capitol Hill.
Okay.
And I would drive in, take the BW Parkway all the way in to DC, like find a parking space and then hit the hill and do all that stuff. So I got to know College Park a little bit for a summer.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great place to be. Such a huge campus to begin with, and being the proximity to DC and Baltimore and like the beaches, like the Eastern Shore. I mean, it's unbelievable. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I think it was always my dream to go to Penn State University. I grew up 20 minutes from there. My grandfather had season tickets. My first game was actually Penn State versus Maryland when I was maybe 10 years old, 8 years old. And it was always my dream. And things happened, and I ended up in Maryland, which is probably the best thing for me as an individual, because a lot of my friends ended up going to Penn State, the branch campuses and stuff throughout the state, and they were home every weekend. And I grew up in a small town. It was 2,500 people, I believe. And just being able to drive 3.5 hours to the University of Maryland, College Park, gave me my independence for the first time, which I needed. I played 3 sports. I was, all state in football. I won a state championship in wrestling, and baseball. I had a scholarship to play baseball in college. So it was just such a small town, and I don't know, getting away, it actually, I think, looking back, obviously done me the best, made me, more of a independent person and living by myself and branching off and getting out of my comfort zone. And it was awesome. And also, it wasn't so far away where my parents could come down 3.5 hours, or if I wanted to get home for a weekend, I could. But it wasn't a 20-minute drive.
Right, long enough that it was disincentive.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that when you go off to college, you got to get some independence.
And that area, like you mentioned, is kind of the center of the universe.
It is. And really my only regret is not branching off and doing all the things that you could do in D.C. and Baltimore and Maryland in general. I'm a big history guy. And looking back, I wish I would have taken advantage of all the historic events or places, that are in the area, particularly like in the Civil War era and all the battlegrounds or the battlefields and other areas that the state has to offer. And even D.C. and all the museums and all the history that they have, like right there in our backyard at University of Maryland. My only regret is not really fully taking advantage of that.
Yeah, it's easy to get kind of caught in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
Well, plus you're playing football.
Yeah.
And that was what, presumably you were there for. And tell us a little bit about that experience, college football.
Yeah, so in high school, I played 3 sports. I had scholarships to play all 3. I went to University of Maryland. I walked on. I didn't walk on. I had a scholarship. I redshirted my first year. I was too small. I was a linebacker. And I played fullback and linebacker in high school. And the Terps, the coaching staff wanted me to be.
Who was your coach at the time?
At that time, it was Ron Vanderlinden. It was probably 10 to 12, not all in him, but 10 to 12, maybe 15 years straight, losing seasons, no bowl appearances. And they had the right players in place. Unfortunately for him, it was his 3rd or 4th year, went 5-6. So the next year, my first year of playing, and we got a new coaching staff, Ralph Friesen, who came from Bobby Ross, San Diego Chargers back in the 90s. They went to the Super Bowl. Georgia Tech time. He spent time in Georgia Tech in the 90s as well, and had a tremendous success as an offense coordinator. They brought him in. Finally, I was going to get an opportunity to play because I redshirted my first year. Well, it was going into that summer session. The team realized that the long snapper failed out of school. Cool. And he was a true freshman. The same year as whenever I came in, he was the same year as me. And there was a senior on the team as well, but he graduated. So that summer session, we realized, hey, there's no long snapper on this team at all. So they kind of lined everyone up and said, hey, who can do this? All the linebackers, tight ends, everyone, probably 20, 30% of the team probably just, attempted it. And they're like, well, Condo, you're the only one who can get it back there 15 yards. So just keep practicing it over summer. And, we'll try to find a guy from a community college or a military academy or somewhere to come in and fulfill that position. I'm like, okay, well, doesn't matter. I'll work hard. And, training camp came in August and they didn't bring a guy in. They couldn't find one. They're like, well, let's see what you got. How hard have you been working? And I'm like, okay, well, still you're our best guy. So you're basically all we got. so I was like, okay, awesome. Like I was so excited because I'm like playing Division I football, ACC, and it's just going to be an awesome experience for me. I'm a team player. I just wanted to do whatever I could to give back and contribute to the team.
Sure.
And so I started playing, went 4 or 5 weeks in. It was just awesome playing Division I football. But then I realized, well, I'm not playing scout team. I'm not playing defense. I'm just a specialist. I'm like looking on the sideline. I'm like, okay, I have a kicker over here and a punter over here. I don't really gel with these guys. These conversations, like, these aren't football players. They're kind of, head cases, so to speak. Like, these are kickers. I don't want to hang out with these kickers. And I actually really wanted to transfer. I was just like, this is not for me. I need to be doing something. And at that time, I remember having conversations with my father, who's a big impact in my life. I looked up to, probably my biggest role model. And I told him, I go, listen, I can't handle this. Like, I'm not doing anything. I need to be busy. I'm sitting on the sideline 95% of the practice. And in the game, I'm playing, which is awesome, but I'm only in like 90 and 95% of the game. And he's like, well, John, let me tell you a little bit something about commitment. You signed a 4-year deal to play, Division I football with the Terps, and they signed it too. He goes, if it was up to me, I'd honor that commitment. But you're your own person. You can do whatever you want. So I took those words to dear, and I said, you know what, you're right. So
you got to know the kickers.
So I got to know the kickers. So I became a specialist. And at that time,
okay, you guys are weird, but okay, I'll hang out with you.
No, I became really good friends with them. And I at first, obviously, I disliked it, but then my coach said, you can make a lot of money doing this someday. And I just kind of rolled my eyes. And next thing you know,
because in the NFL,
year
you think about money makers are the quarterbacks and the big D linemen and whatever else, and you never think about long snap.
And at that time, the long snappers were, I don't want to say specialist positions in the NFL, but they usually had a backup position, a backup offensive lineman, a backup tight end who did that position. But my coach said, you can do it. Listen, I spent time in the NFL. I know you could do it. And I just kind of, again, rolled my eyes. But it wasn't until probably the end of my beginning of my senior year, where coaches from the NFL were actually coming in and scouts just to watch me snap. And I was like, holy cow, this could be a reality.
That's amazing.
Like, this could be something. So next thing you know, the season ends and teams are calling me up, and I'm working out for all the pro days and combines, and teams are calling me, and I signed with an agency, and I'm like, this could be a possibility. And it just, I don't know, a very exciting time for me at that moment. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to play in the NFL.
That's amazing.
Awesome. What? How'd you tell us? But so you spent the most of your careers in Oakland with the Raiders. How did you end up there?
So coming out of college, I signed an undrafted free agency or a free agent deal with the Dallas Cowboys. And I remember being on the phone with Bill Parcells, and they're like, listen, we like you. You played linebacker in college, because my last 2 years, they actually said, okay, we finally got a backup for you. So you could continue to play some linebacker. Unfortunately, at that time, Sean Merriman came and I backed him up. So I didn't really I got some garbage time in the fourth quarter, but it was all worth it. So he said, hey, listen, we love your coverage ability. You're actually a factor. You're not like some guy snapping a ball and just being another guy like the punter and being a non-factor in the play. Like these returners are really athletic, and we need a 10th guy at least down there making some sort of plays. And so they signed me. Played 3 games. We had some missed kicks. And I don't know. Was it my fault? I don't know. But I was the low man on the totem pole, and they just said, we're releasing you. So I found out real quick how the NFL worked, and it was like the business of it. When I made the initial 53-man roster, I was like, man, I got myself an apartment, thinking about what car I'm going to buy, and everything was going good. And then it was after week 3, so it was just like, hey, I had my ankles taped, about ready to go out for practice, and the guy just tapped me on the shoulder. I looked at him, he goes, hey, yeah, we're going to release you. I'm like, okay. Wow. I had no idea what to do, and I was just like standing there like.
So they didn't give you any sort of explanation? Or
no, they just, you had
2 bad games.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even say that it was bad games. It was like our kicker was missed, and like the next week the kicker missed another one, and he got released. So it was a combination of things. They had like 3 or 4 kickers throughout training camp. A couple of those long snappers were because I was in competition. A couple of different holders at that time. It was Tony Romo who was holding, and
we all know what happened to him.
Well, and it's funny to talk about that because with that hold that I'm thinking that you're referring to that he had in the playoff.
Am I referring to something about Tony Romo? I wasn't aware of that.
We played.
I might be.
We played up in Seattle that same year in the preseason, and the same exact thing happened. Where he just kind of botched.
I'm sorry, snap. I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I really don't care.
Well, I mean, they gave me an opportunity, so there's some. Obviously, my alliances or my allegiance is probably to the Raiders.
Yeah,
the Raiders. But no, and I mean, it was probably one of the better things that happened to me because it made me learn real fast how the business was, like how it was handled, and how the staff and administration handled players and. It's just not like you're not safe. So I moved in with my brother Bill in Southern Maryland and became a substitute teacher. And I learned real fast. I went to school to be a teacher. I wanted to be a coach and a teacher. And I learned real fast that I did not want to be a teacher. So I was like, okay, I got to continue to work if I want to have an NFL career. So I continued to work. Nothing really panned out that year. I had some workouts. Finally, I signed with the Patriots in the offseason of 2006. Signed with them. Got to see that organization, which is unbelievable. You learn real quick why they had success because it was a player-led team. It wasn't like the coaches telling the players what to do and putting the peer pressure on the players to do it. It was the players themselves taking it upon themselves to do the work. And if you didn't do the work, you wouldn't hear it from the coaches. You'd hear it from the players. Mm-hmm. And that's how that team was like, how it was led. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how they had success. And Tom Brady specifically going to Tampa Bay this past year and winning the Super Bowl in his first year, taking a team that's hovering around 500, and then next thing you know, it's just taking them to the next level.
So that what you're describing is more of a function or a culture. Do you think that was created by Brady, or is it created?
I think Belichick. I think Belichick. Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of things, and even in Mr. Kraft as well. Just being the owner, just not that he stood out like. Stepped aside or anything like that, but it was just a matter of getting all the right pieces in place. But I mean, how you see any team, especially professional teams, because you're dealing with grown men. You're not dealing with teenage kids that are 18 years old, 19 years old in college, and even high school kids, where you are shaped and influenced by coaches. You're dealing with grown men where some of the coaches or some of the players are older than the coaches.
Sure.
So once you get a team that takes it upon themselves, like, hey, this is our team. The coaches are going to be there to try to put us in the right positions, but this is our team. You take it as far as you want to take it. And you can see it in all sports. I like to really, because I spend time in the Bay Area, I look at the San Francisco Giants. When they won three World Series championships in a matter of 5 or 6 years. There's not that many like star power players on those teams. I mean, you have Buster Posey and you had some pitchers, but for the most part, you saw them come together as a team and and you watch them play in October, and they're just gritty. They're just finding ways to win, and the same with the in the NFL. There's teams out there like the Giants. Remember the New York Giants with Eli Manning? Like one of those teams. I think they're a wild card team. They're like maybe 10-6 or 9-7. They get in, but they just were peaking at the right time, and the players started believing. They started like saying, "Hey, this is our thing. This is our opportunity to be part of history," and they just rolled with it.
Yeah.
So it's the NFL, and you have coaches and they understand that, but it's a matter of finding the right players to take that upon themselves. You have to find the right leaders to help mold the younger guys and teach them how it is to be a professional. And usually the successful teams, you're going to find that chemistry in the locker room. Every team has talent, but it's just a matter of finding those right locker room guys to get the team, how they, to teach the young guys and specifically how to be a player.
Yeah.
So you're in New England. You see this amazing structure of player-led philosophy, and then you end up in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
What was there differences? What did you take from New England to Oakland?
Well, so I got released by New England.
How long were you there?
Just for an off season.
Just off
I played a couple preseason games, and then they released me in August. So I moved back in with my mom and dad in Pennsylvania. Didn't know what was going to happen, so I started working for my dad. He retired. He was a retired school teacher. He was painting homes at the time, so I started working with him, and I continued to work out because I was like, just never know when I'm going to get that call. I always wanted to be prepared because you never know when the opportunity is going to be presented to you. Fortunately, I did get that call, and while I was painting a windowsill, my agent said, "Hey, can you make an airport in 3 hours?" I'm like, "Yeah, just book it at Pittsburgh. I could probably get there in 2.5." And it was like, I was like, and this is how I was brought up. I get down from the ladder. I'm like cleaning my brush. I told my coworker, I'm like, "Hey, I got a call. I'm going to Oakland." But my dad always said, "Hey, whenever you're done painting, you'll clean up. Clean up your brush, clean up your mess." So I started like cleaning up like frantically, and my coworker's like, "Jon, what the heck are you doing? Like, get out of here. I'll clean that up for you." And I didn't even tell my dad I was leaving. I was just like, I got in the car, I packed the bag and left. Got out to Oakland, had a great workout, but they decided to go with someone else. So I was all bummed out. I was like, man, like I thought I did great. I in my opinion, obviously I snapped the best. So I was like, I thought it was my position, but they decided to go with another guy, and which is cool. But I was packed. I was ready to go to the airport. But one of the guy in the administration came down and said, "Hey, can you play linebacker?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I can." Like who can't, basically. And I played in college, like, because I knew where he was going. He's like,
Yeah.
Because we have a practice squad spot opening up because we just took a guy off the practice squad to be the snapper. We have one, and tomorrow we have practice, so we need a guy. I was like, yeah, of course, I'll do it. So I basically the last 5 games of that year, I was on practice squad. No one knew, and when they signed me, everyone just thought I was a linebacker. No one knew I could long snap except for the kicker and the punter. And at the end of the season, they wanted to re-sign me, and I made sure I was going to get an opportunity to snap because I knew my career in the NFL wasn't as a linebacker. So they signed me, and it was Lane Kiffin at that time, getting the opportunity from Al Davis, and signed me, and it was a 1-year deal. I had like 3 or 4 1-year deals in a row, and so it always kept me on top of my game. I
think Lane Kiffin's deal was like a 1-year deal.
Yeah. 1 year and 3 games, I think. After we attempted a 76-yard field goal, which is definitely
I don't think the University of Southern California that ever happened.
No,
I don't know where he learned that.
It's funny, like every year, like I see on Twitter, on social media, it says on this date back in I don't know, September 28th, 2007, Lane Kiffin attempted a 76-yard field goal, and they have like a minute clip of them showing it. And literally, like when I remember, because it was right before the half, and it was versus the Chargers.
The play that killed Al Davis.
And we huddled up on the sideline, and I'm like, oh, it's 4th down. I know I'm either going to be punting or kicking a field goal, which I'm like, I don't know why we'd be kicking a field goal, but Seabass was right there. Her kicker was Sebastian Janikowski, and I was like,
oh yeah,
okay. Next thing you know, I heard Lane just said, "Hey, let's kick it." and you can kind of see my lips like said a couple bad words. Like, are you like kidding me? And he just like kind of looked at me, gave me a glance, and I'm just like, I like didn't know how to respond, so I just kind of turned around and ran out on film. Like, I'm gonna be out on display anyway. So next thing you know, the field goal team comes out. Here we're kicking a 76-yard field goal. There was a returner in the back because he was like, he's definitely going to be short. Is camaraderie, and he literally just returned one the week before. Same scenario.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, this is not going to be good.
This
is not going to be good. Fortunately, we snapped. He was Seabass was short, and but we were able to tackle him and go in the halftime unscathed. But I don't know if that's the play that got him fired, but it probably sent
It's definitely
Al
part of
over
it.
yeah. Because I think when Al had his press conference, because I know he had like a little press conference when Lane got fired, and he did bring that up. And I don't know, but I'm definitely grateful for Lane and giving me the opportunity. He was the first coach to come in there and said, "You're going to be our guy," and so.
Listening to you, it's such a great story of resilience because you had so many false starts or just short
ups and downs.
Yeah. Excuse me. I don't think anybody grows up dreaming to be a long snapper. And you kind of fell into this because there wasn't one and you happened to be the best, probably unbeknownst to you.
Mm-hmm.
But given that you obviously are an amazing athlete, you had scholarships for 3 different sports. What should there be should there be football players at the high school level and the college level that actually pursue this? Is that something that you think?
Oh, it's going on. It's going on right now.
Okay.
The long snapper now, like when I first got in, it was basically a backup, a role position. And when I first got in, that's how it was. But then you just slowly saw the change of that where, hey, these games are coming down to points.
Yeah.
And every point matters. So we can't really trust, a backup lineman or a backup tight end he could get the ball back there, but we need precision. We need like 99.9% accuracy on all plays. And you saw the revolution of how it came from the snapper, from being a backup role position to being full-time, where teams started to say, hey, we have 3 positions on the team, or 3 roster spots on the team, 1 for the snapper, 1 for the kicker, and 1 for the punter. And it just it's a norm now.
Yeah.
And it's becoming, so recognized where you see high school kids, there's camps where high school kids it's just long snappers, and they're getting full scholarships to be just the long snappers. So you see it as basically a position now. And which is really cool to see.
That's amazing.
It's really cool to see. And yeah, when I first started playing, it was like there's no holds bar. Like I was just on offensive lineman, but you see now we're protected positions. We're snapping with our heads down so people can't line up over top of us. So you don't have to be a big lineman body. Now you could be 215, 220 pounds to do it. You see typical snappers probably between 250 and 220 to 240, I would say. And which is a good thing because it's giving people who might not have the athletic ability to play football even in the high school level, it's given them the opportunity to be on the football field.
Sure.
So,
are they relying on long snappers as much to block downfield? And
look at the return
make
game.
the plays?
Look at the return. Especially when I was playing in the AFC West with the Raiders, we were going against Tyreek Hill, which is he's so fast and he's a phenom in the return game. And like you saw how the Chiefs worked, it was all about field position. Like the first couple of years when Andy Reid was there, their starting field position was like the 40-some yard line, which is crazy because it's just give them, make a couple first downs, you're already in field goal range.
Yeah.
And that's in the return game. It's a matter of, like people look at punters like, okay, well, what's your gross yardage? It's really, that's not what like dictates a good punter these days. It's all about net yardage.
Yeah.
It's cool if you could punt the ball 55, 60 yards, but if you're giving up a 20-yard return every time, that's not really doing the team any favor. So now you see a lot where the game has changed from a punter just punting the ball as far as he can. Now it's all, sideline punts, trying to pin the returner to the sidelines to kind of put the whole coverage team on that side to eliminate any return. So the game has changed in special teams point of view.
Which is funny. It's kind of like what you do in a video game.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's true. I mean,
Yeah.
all the EA Sports and college football and Madden, you always try to pin the ball on the sideline.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you're
Why don't they do more of this in the NFL?
well, it's to be part of the game in 2005, 2006, where it was kind of just like it was just a play. But now every single there's so many trying to think of like analyticals of the game where people are just like trying to find every little inch to better their team.
Yeah.
'Cause you just never know what play is going to be to one, put points on the board, but two, to change the momentum. And momentum is big in any game.
Right.
Because you could see, it's very uncommon to see a team just come out and dominate 4 quarters in a row, like nonstop. There's valleys and peaks in every game, whether sport it is for the most part, and especially football, because it's a turnover, it's a big hit on a quarterback, it's a long run. It could be a short run that a running back just runs over a linebacker, just gets the team fired up. It's just, you never know what play is gonna happen to spark that momentum.
So you were with the Raiders for how long?
So end of 2006 through the 2017 season.
So that's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
In terms of your longevity.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of Raider football, obviously,
yeah.
during those years. So I just want to shift the conversation just a little bit. And I don't want you to, say anything poorly about the organization that gave you all those years or anything. But the Raiders are an enigma in the NFL. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Is that a fair I mean, they're just, but with who Al Davis was and the family. I mean, they've been in Oakland, they've been in Los Angeles, they've been back to Oakland, now they're in Las Vegas, and people love them. I mean, Raider Nation is a huge part of our country and a huge part of the game, and you either love it or you hate it or whatever. But it seems to be the most dysfunctional piece of the NFL, where it seems like where a lot of players.
Cleveland Browns.
Well, but it seems where like a lot of players just go and they end their careers or what have you, and what. Just talk a little bit about the NFL and what made great organizations. You talked a little bit about obviously the Patriots, and what makes organizations that they just can't quite get it together. And the Raiders are kind of in the middle of that. I would say they've been great, and then they've been inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm 100% grateful to the Oakland Raiders and to the Davis family for giving me the opportunity. And I can only speak on my experiences. I mean, you look at the Raiders. I mean, Al Davis is part of that organization since the early '60s, and he was, as an owner, coach, he liked to do things his way, and whether it was right or wrong, like he had success. He had success.
Just win,
John
baby.
Madden, in the '70s, and even in the '80s, he had success, and in the '90s, and I think, I mean, I could only speculate on what happened or like how it got to the point. But it's more so, I would say he liked his control, and he wanted coaches to do things his way, I would say, which I think when coaches got in there, they're mostly younger coaches. Look at when Jon Gruden got in there, he was a young coach. Lane Kiffin, young coach, and, or it was an older coach who's kind of, on the tail end of his career, and he can't really get a job, and so he gets an older coach in there. It's I do remember defensive coaches coming in there, and Mr. Davis wanted the defense to be run a certain way. And no matter what, it was going to be Raider 3 coverage. It was man-to-man coverage, and that's how it was going to be. And I don't want to say he didn't give the coaches the freedom, but he probably had more of a say in how things were being run. That's my only guess on, how the team was.
Yeah.
But I think when Mark Davis came into the picture, he did a good thing right away. He hired a GM who kind of took over everything, and Mark stayed out of the business side, or not the business, I'm sorry, the football side of it, and he kind of did the business. He wanted to be, help, to make the organization, be more notable on the business side as things. And he hired a man to do the football side of it, and I think it started getting on the right path. I think they're on the right path right now. Obviously, I think Coach Gruden is a great coach. Mike Mayock is the GM. I think they're doing the right things to build, an organization back to what they were in the 70s and 80s. So, but it's hard to say what makes a good organization from a bad organization. It's just, I think trust, I think communication, all those things probably in any type of business, just being able to be on the same page as from the top of the totem pole to the bottom. Everyone needs to be on the same page and doing the right things. And I think there's just a lot of moving parts, whenever I was with the Oakland Raiders, and nothing really, everyone was worried what Mr. Davis was going to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes
you never knew when the shoe was going to drop.
Yeah, and you got to be.
I mean, how many times was Art Shell the coach?
No,
of
yeah,
the Oakland Raiders,
and it was just, I don't know. There has to be a trust factor in there. I know, but being with the Patriots, I mean, you could say that, yeah, that's how an organization is supposed to be run, but. I mean, if it wasn't for the players at the time, or even Belichick, who knows what that organization is going to be?
Yeah, every organization has its issues.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's not one thing or another.
Exactly.
Well, and it goes to how important personalities are in organizations. Everyone thinks about a big company, and they don't really think, in a team. It's really about people, and how they, the leadership that's provided, the interaction, the mentoring, and the cohesiveness, and I think that's applicable at any organization. How did the camaraderie with players? Tell us a little bit about how you develop friendships and relationships with other players and their families, and I mean, I presume that's a big part of keeping cohesiveness.
Oh yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, that was another reason why the Raiders, especially during my time, didn't really pan out. I guess you could say we were always sub 500. Every year there was turnover. There was probably 50% of the team was either being not signed or released or traded, and then another 50% new players would come in, and then you have to develop those relationships. I could talk specifically about the specialists. My first couple of years with the Raiders, probably 6-7 years, we had the best punter probably to ever play the game, Shane Leckler, and Sebastian Janikowski, one of the best kickers to ever play the game. And then you had me, which I don't know how I got in it. I was just very fortunate that they liked me, and they made me feel comfortable. But there's a cohesiveness with us where we were doing our job. As for the rest of the team, I'm not putting blame on why we were losing, but it was just like new members every year. Like the tight end room, for example, it could be. There's usually 3 or 4 tight ends every year, and it's maybe 3 of them are changing out every year. And it's like, how do you develop that chemistry? The tight ends are important with the offensive linemen to get communication down. The tight ends are important with the wide receivers to get their communication down. But it was always so many different players coming in. It was hard to build that chemistry. I mean, I think there's an understanding in the locker room. Everyone enjoyed everyone. Everyone, for the most part, there's, not that many fights or anything like that, but it was a brotherhood. It was a team, it was a family for us. But it's hard to build that trust when people are in one year out the next. And I think it's no wonder why, the special teams had success, because we had that chemistry, year after year. We knew what to expect from each other. So I think if there's more trust in your coaches and your players, that you could get the job done and give them a little more slack when it comes of, I want progress now, or I want demanding for action, or demanding for something like right away. It's hard because that's where the NFL is going. Like you're especially with look at the Buccaneers, like sub 500 team to a Super Bowl. Like that's not going to do other organizations well, because GMs and owners are going to see that and are like, well, let's do it now.
Right.
Like I want results now, but sometimes you have to build those relationships to get those results. And I mean, I enjoyed my time with Raiders, developed a lot of great friends and met their families and all that stuff. But it's just, to have a winning team, you have to have that cohesiveness and knowing what to expect year after year. Right. And it's just hard because every year is changing. Even coaches. I mean, I think I had 7 head coaches.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the 12 years, I was 13 years with the Raiders. So it's
that's what I tried to touch on earlier, is that the revolving door of Raider coaches has just been it's been just dizzying.
Yeah.
And I think you made a great point about Jon Gruden, and he's been there before, obviously, but hopefully he can build on that. First of all, that commitment to excellence, which is what the Raiders always talk about, but that consistency, right?
Exactly. And he signed like a long deal, so that's going to give him his time.
Yeah.
Which other coaches, Lane Kiffin, Tom Cable, those coaches that didn't have the time, they had a year to produce or 2 years. And with him, he knows he's getting his players in.
Well, Chucky is also really respected. Within both the college and pro ranks in a way that a lot of other coaches probably aren't.
Yeah. No, and I think he's doing a good job. I know you watched his games and with the talent that they have, they're in most of the games. I mean, last year they beat the Chiefs. They had some great wins last year, but then you face a sub 500 team, and then you have a couple setbacks. It's tough to get up every week. It just proves you have to be ready to play week in and week out. And I mean, they're a couple games away from being in the playoffs and doing some real damage. And I think it's just a matter of learning how to pull out some wins and peaking at the right time. And it's all timing in the NFL. It's all momentum. So every team has talent. It's just a matter of putting that talent together and coming each week to play.
Yeah. Let's shift just gears just a slight bit and talk a little bit about how you exited the NFL, which a lot of people don't know. In terms of how players exit, a lot of people are just they get released or they retire, and your story is rather unique.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it when we first met. I'd say about a year ago, and I just was struck by it as how unique and how special it is, because you don't see players taking it upon themselves to exit well sometimes, and you did. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So at the end of 2017 season, I
and it's recent.
It's not that
long ago.
So I thought not that my career was over in 2018, but I became a free agent. I'm like, I could still play. The Raiders didn't re-sign my contract, and I just wanted to prove to them and myself that I could still do it. So fortunately, I signed with the Falcons at the end of 2018. Well, finished the season with them. 2019 came. I was like, I'll still play if a team calls me, but I don't want to be a free agent. I don't want to be on a plane every week, working out, taking my time away from my family. If a team calls me before training camp, I'll consider it. Well, training camp came and gone. Season started. I was like, okay, my career's over, and started thinking about what I was going to do next. Living in California, and next thing you know, the season started. Week 4 came. My agent called. He said, "Hey, the Niners want to work you out." I was like, "Well, Chad, I haven't worked out for a long time, and I haven't snapped the ball for an even longer time. I lost 20, 25 pounds. There's no way they're going to sign me." And he's like, "Just give it up, just give it a try, And I'm like, "Well, I don't even know if I want to play, because my mind, I seriously haven't thought about it." And he's like, "Listen, this would be great closure." So that's what he sold me on. He's like, "This would be good closure." I'm like, "You know what? You're right. It would be. Go down." He's like, "Go down there, get a free lunch, check out their facilities. Meet the coaching staff and the GM." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I will." So I go down there, had an unbelievable workout. I weighed in 212 pounds, which I normally play about 235. So I was like, yeah, they're not going to sign me. Well, towards the end of the workout, the special teams coach came up to me. He was like, "Hey, what's the latest you ever played?" I was like, I don't know, 220, 225, I'd say maybe my latest. He's like, "Hey, we're going to sign you. So we need to figure out a way to put some weight on you fast." I'm like, okay. And literally at that moment, I said to myself, what am I going to do? This is not, I wasn't expecting this. And so I got off the phone, or I called my wife and told her. She's ecstatic because she was a diehard Niner fan growing up. Her family had season tickets, and she's so excited. She told all of her friends, and she's like, "Yeah, John's going to be playing for the Niners." And I was like, "Please don't bring any more." Because mentally, I don't know if I'm there. And I do the week of practice. This was Tuesday. And so Wednesday's the first week of practice. Go in there the next day. I knew the good thing. I knew the kicker, and I knew some of the other players on the team, so I felt comfortable. I started having doubts right away because I was like, I haven't played. This is the first time I put on a shoulder pad since last December, And here, like, there's guys running at me now, and like, I didn't have a preseason. I didn't have a training camp to prepare myself. So I started doubting myself right away. And I remember having bad thoughts like Friday and even Saturday in the hotel. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do this. But I convinced myself, I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe game day, you know, the adrenaline will kick in, which it did. And it would just make me believe, like, hey, this is why I play the game. Well, game day came, adrenaline ran out on field. I was pumped up, ready to go. Game started, playing all right. And then it was probably sometime in the middle of the second quarter where I started watching the clock. And I'm like, I want this game to be over with. You know, I really do not want to be here. And it started putting bad thoughts in my head, and, you know, thinking about the game and thinking about if the game comes down to a last second field goal or a kick or a punt snap. And that's not what you want to be thinking about at all on the sideline, especially when you're not playing. You know, I'm out there, you know, 5% of the time, and I'm just have time to think about bad scenarios happen. And it's like that in any sport. And I just remember, you know, I played the rest of the game. Fortunately, you know, we ended up winning the game. The offense didn't have a good game. We ended up making 3 or 4 kicks, which I did a pretty good job at snapping, I thought. But that night, I was just so relieved that the game was over and we won. And it wasn't my fault that we lost or anything. That was the only thing that was going on in my head. And so I woke up the next morning, and I kind of said to myself, and I spoke briefly with my wife, I'm like, I think I'm going to call it quits. Like, I don't want to put myself through that. That was miserable. That was just not how I want to live the rest of my life, you know, the rest of the season, so to speak, just being in my own head. And so I remember driving to the facility that morning, and I called my agent. I told him I was going to retire. And he just couldn't believe it. He's like, well, you just had a game. You just won. Like, he goes, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. So I went in there. I talked to the GM, and John Lynch. He was awesome. He was really awesome. Talked to him, and we had a bye week the following week, which is and I kind of wanted to tell him before then, just for him to get a new guy in as soon as possible. Because I know the logistics of that, getting during the bye week. Coaches are leaving, players are leaving. You just want to get a guy in as quickly as possible. So I told him, and he said, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, you know, I'm pretty sure. And he goes, why don't you, like, go home, you know, don't even worry about working out today. Just go home, spend some time with family. And he goes, I was very fortunate that, you know, towards the end of my career, I thought I retired to the Broncos, but then Belichick called me with the Patriots. He said, why don't you come in? And I thought, yeah, I'll get another ring with the Patriots. Well, same thing. He went training camp, and he's like, this is not for me. And Belichick gave him like a week off, went home and thought about it, and he just decided to call it quits then. And he gave me that same opportunity. And I just said, John, like, I know. Like, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I very selfishly could have stayed on the team and taken another paycheck.
Sure.
They paid by week there. I could have gotten another game check, which is really, really nice in the NFL. But, you know, I knew. And I just didn't want to keep people hanging on. And it was funny. He brought me down to Coach Shanahan. And it was such a short week the previous week where it was like my first time talking to him. You know, I saw him in the hallways, say hello and stuff like that, but it wasn't really, I had no conversation with him. And after, you know, I talked to him, we were like getting up and we started laughing, you know, about random things. And he's like, I just couldn't believe my first conversation with you is you telling me that you're retired. I'm just like, yeah, you know, I'm sorry. But so it was the best decision I made because I didn't have any regrets for the rest of the year. I got all that worry, the bad thoughts out of my head, and I didn't have to go week in, week out just thinking of something bad's going to happen. And that could put a lot of stress and anxiety in someone. And I'm very proud of myself for doing that. And I think any other time when I had bad thoughts in my mind, I would never like talk about it. And I think there's so much into communicating whenever there's some bad things going on in your mind, just to communicate it. Because just by talking to someone, trusting someone to be able to talk, that does so much to your mind. And so I was just very, very fortunate and to get out of there unscathed and doing the best for myself and for the team. And unfortunately, they went to the Super Bowl that year. And you better believe if they would have won, you know, the first person, you know, that John Lynch was going to hear from the next morning was probably a voicemail from me, just reminding him of the dedicated decision that I made for the team, the sacrifice that I made for the team. And then plus my ring size. but that never happened. So,
But that's just a really unique lesson in integrity that you don't see very often nowadays. I mean, just knowing when you're done, knowing when your time is up, and anything that you're doing, where you don't have the heart for it anymore, you don't have the passion, you don't have the stomach, the gut check, and that's really unique.
Yeah, no, it is very fortunate to call it quits whenever you call it quits. 99.8% of the players in the NFL,
they just keep going.
That's not how their ending is.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate because I had setbacks in the beginning of my career, and I always said when I first made the Raiders, I made it a promise to myself. I go, I want to be able to, I don't want to be tapped on the shoulder again and have someone tell me that, hey, we're releasing you. So I made it upon myself. I'm like, I want to be able to determine when my career is over. And that wasn't really in my mind when I was driving to the facility, that September morning, but that's how things worked out. And I'm very, very happy that that's how it was, because it's just a very unique situation for someone to call it quits that way. And and like I said, no regrets at all for doing it. I knew it was what was meant for me.
That's great. That's a great lesson for anybody, that to be able to go out on your own terms when you know it's right, and preserve both the integrity of your own decision, but also giving the organization the opportunity to say, okay, we appreciate it. And it sounds like Lynch was very good about that. Mm-hmm. And then being able to, they went out and had a great season, and that's good for them. Yeah. I mean, clearly it was the right call for you, and it turned out to be the right call for the team.
Yeah. No, and I don't know, I just remember watching them throughout that year. I watched them, but I never really invested my time to sit down and watch football, and I still haven't. I have 3 young kids running around. They would never allow me to sit down for 3 hours and watch a game. They'd be jumping on me, wanting to swim, wanting to do whatever. And that year, and even to this day, I'm a football fan, but it's hard for me to find the time to sit down and watch a game on a Sunday afternoon. My time is more so turning it on, a Monday night game or a Thursday night game, Sunday night game. Turn it on where the TV's on. I'm interacting with my kids. It's not so much where I'm invested my time in just sitting there and watching the game.
You're analyzing every moment.
Yeah. So I obviously I miss the game, but I don't miss it so much where I'm dwelling on not playing at all.
It's so interesting that you say it that way, because we all know the guys who were great in high school, and that was it. Yeah. And they're 45 or 50 years old, and they're still reveling in the greatness that they were as a high school quarterback or high school.
Al Bundy.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. And here, a professional football player, it's like, I got my family. I mean, it's just that's awesome. That's a good, awesome example.
No, it's probably the biggest factor in me deciding to hang it up is the family, because I had that in the back of my mind, and I want to be there for my kids growing up. I know at this time in their lives, at that time they were 5, 3, and 1. I mean, having a presence in their lives, a father figure in their lives at that time, is a key, especially with 2 young daughters that I have. I wanted to be a very positive influence in their lives, and I wanted to be there for them whenever they wanted me. And I know, because I know from stories that, hey, wait till they become teenagers. They're not even going to want to have anything to do with you. So I figure my time right now, I get it in while I can now, and then they'll come back after their teenage years. They'll come back to you. But I just wanted to make them, with their minds being developed right now, or at that time, I just wanted to be there, just being a father figure, and just doing whatever I can to help out.
And then you made the decision to move here to Arizona, and you're working in real estate, and you're raising your kids and coaching soccer from time to time.
Yeah.
I just got looped into coach soccer with Mr. Condo here. I don't know what
it's Coach Condo.
Coach Condo, sorry.
That's right.
It was Coach Condo too.
No.
I don't know what that's going to look like, but it might be fun.
I tell you what, being in sports my whole life, that was probably the most stressful part of my whole career in the sporting world, just trying to get they were 6 years old back then, last year. So
Last
it was
year.
like just getting six,
All girls soccer
all
team.
girls, 7 girls, 6-year-old.
imagine it.
All girls
Just-
soccer team. I walk up to drop Grace off, and here's this big coach sitting there. I don't know who he is, and then of course my wife, learns that you were with the Raiders.
Yeah.
And immediately like, oh, that guy. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was awesome. It was definitely.
I think we
it's
won
stressful.
like one game, maybe.
Maybe a tie. I don't know. it was one game. I distinctly remember one game we lost. I think it was like 20-0, or it was like 20-1. It was bad. It was really bad. And at that time, like
I think
our
I
team,
made every game but one.
our team was like all beginners. They never played before, and like so I talked to some coaches after the game. I'm like, yeah, this is our 3rd year together. I'm like, you're 6 years old. Like this is your 3rd year. Like you guys start
That's
like that young.
amazing.
It's like yeah. So you see the cohesiveness of a team, and when players get familiar with each other, how much better they can be. So we were all beginners, even me as a coach. But it was after that game, I was like, we're not going to work on offense anymore. And I knew, I'm like, I don't, because my kids didn't have fun that game. It was just not fun. You could see, like, if they lose by a couple points, there's still smiles. But after that game, they're all like heads down, and they just did not have fun. So I was like, I'm going to change things. So I knew how the games are run. It's a continuous clock. So I was like, okay, anytime the ball is kicked to you, if you don't have a free lane to the goal, just kick it out of bounds. So when they kicked it out of bounds, the clock is still going. So it restricts the amount of time that the other team has to score a goal. So I kind of like used the clock, and from that game on, we were in just about every game. Our defense became really good, really good. We just needed a couple more aggressive offensive players to get in there and score goals, which we had a couple, but for the most part, our girls, they're all beginners. So they're trying to feel out how the game should be played. They didn't realize, sometimes you have to get your body in there and maybe throw some elbows around to get the ball to be a little aggressive with it. And it's just, I think towards the end of the year, they started to figure that out. And I don't know, we ended up having a really good time.
I'm either blessed or cursed with a very aggressive, very athletic young girl. And one thing I remember distinctly about the season last year is, you've played professional sports. You've been around some of the greatest leaders, greatest coaches in history, right? Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of people out there coaching little girls soccer who think they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been around it before, but and you had I won't say an altercation, but you had some words with another coach who just thought he was just yelling at his players. He was yelling at everybody. It was one of the most insane things I've ever seen for 6-year-old girls soccer.
Yeah. No, it was,
to your point, people don't leave their road to glory behind.
No.
They think they can live it out through something
They want to
else.
live it vicariously through 6-year-old.
Yeah,
soccer,
it's
which is
just
insane.
it was the craziest thing I've ever
no,
seen.
it was bad, and it was very sad to see.
Yeah.
And for me, being a coach, like I said, we had all beginners. So anytime our kids would score, which wouldn't happen that much, I was very energetic and very enthusiastic, and that's how I live. You can control your attitude, and if you're enthusiastic and have a positive attitude, you don't know who else might be down that day, who you're going to affect to bring up. So that's one of my biggest characteristics is always have a positive attitude and be excited when you score things and when good things happen. Be excited, So we scored. I remember we scored, and I think it might have put us up by a point, and I was just like, high five, give everyone a high five and clap hands and be excited, do a dance. I don't care. Just be excited. Well, the coach kind of looked at me like I was rubbing it in, but that's so not my personality. I'm not rubbing it in. These are 6-year-old girls playing soccer. We're not in the World Cup finals.
If there were butterflies on the field, they'd be chasing those.
But it wasn't just that goal that I was doing that. I was doing that with every goal for for the whole season. Well, they scored a goal next, and then he kind of started mocking me, like high fives, like everyone slap hands, and I just looked at him, and I'm just like, are you serious? And it was just really bad, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. I went to talk to the guy after, and it was another disappointment where I was just like, hey, I had my daughter there. I wanted her to see, and I think his daughter, some young girls were over there. I'm like, hey, I just want to like hash it out, like talk man to man, like what's going on there. And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, nothing to talk about.
Wow.
Nothing to talk about. I'm like, seriously? Like, you're just mocking me. Like, my kids, they're all beginners. I want them to play next year, but they're not going to play if they don't have fun.
Right.
And the only time we can have fun is when we score a goal. We're not winning games. We score 1 or 2 goals a game, and I just want them to have fun. And he's just like, yeah, nothing to talk about. I'm like,
It's
this is
6-year-old
yeah.
girls
I'm like, this
soccer.
is so bad. This is so bad. And I feel bad for his team or the players on his team, just if that's what they're getting from a coach.
That's not what they need. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Wow. How did you end up coming to Arizona?
My wife went to ASU.
Okay.
She's a Sun Devil, and she grew up in California. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I have no ties to anywhere. And it was last year or 2020 during COVID. We were visiting my in-laws' house in La Quinta, California, and Arizona just opened up, and we're like, hey, we got 3 kids. Let's give them a little bit of normalcy, even if it's 50% full, like restaurants, and you still have to wear a mask inside. Like, hey, like at least we're outside and doing stuff. Let's take them to a park. And so we traveled over, and we thought, like, maybe let's look at some real estate and see, if anything looks good to buy for like an investment property. And we came here and we learned real quick, like the pricing of homes and the amount of space that you get compared to where we were at in the Bay Area. It was like night and day. Like I left the Bay Area. I bought a 1,900 square foot home on like 0.12 acres, and I bought at an outrageous price, like $1,200 to $1,250 a square foot.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to be my forever home. So I was like, I'm fine with overpaying because it's a great location. It's a great property, and we'll make it our own. Well, here I get to Arizona, and basically for the same price, I'm getting a 5,000 square foot home on 2/3 of an acre with a lot more space. And it was like, it was a no brainer.
Yeah.
It was literally a no brainer. And fortunately my wife, it was hard for her because her family's all in California, but the thing with her, she loved Arizona. She loves the weather. So we decided to make the move. We decided to put our kids, we didn't know where California was going in terms of, with schooling and all that stuff. And our oldest, Grace, we started to notice a difference with her. Like, she couldn't learn virtually. She could not get on the computer. And we find out we did some, I had some tests for her, and she developed a little bit of anxiety and some stress. And we thought the best thing for her was in-person learning. And that was last July, and we started interviewing schools, and we found a school, and they just said, yeah, we're in person. We're in person right away from the get-go. And we're like, this is what we want. This is what the best thing for our family and for our daughters and for our son, Jack, to get them in school. They need the social interaction. And I get the topic of, in-person, virtual and stuff, but for us personally, that was the option. We're just very lucky that, we have a governor and a state that is given that option to students and families to, like, hey, if you want to learn virtually, you can learn virtually. If you want to be in person, you can be in person. So it was just the best decision that we could do for our family back then, and we're loving it.
Yeah, good.
That's great.
Well, you and a whole bunch of others.
Yeah.
And Arizona's blessed to have you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Where can people find you? Like you're selling real estate, you're doing other stuff.
Yeah, so I signed up real estate. I've just developed a passion for real estate in California. Fortunately, making money in the NFL, where I had the opportunity to buy homes and sell them at a great profit. Just timing of the market is just lucked out, so I got addicted to it. And so I'm working with the Karis Group at Launch Real Estate in Scottsdale there, and just enjoying it. I'm doing, as a former athlete, I know I have the willpower and the work ethic to do whatever I can just to have success. And I'm kind of giving myself the next couple of years to just go all in and to meet as many people as I can. And I don't care if the transaction is $1 or $10 million. I want the transaction just because I need the experience, and I want to learn a new career. I'm 39 years old. Yeah. And it's not, it doesn't happen often where you go from one career to another and you have to start from scratch, it's tough, and especially it's being in the NFL. It's not really business oriented. You can develop a business sense in the NFL by talking to the right people and creating a brand for yourself, but it's you're dealing with other people now, and you're writing contracts and doing all that stuff when it comes to real estate, and so I'm learning on the go, and it's fun, and it's a tough market to be a new agent, but it's fun and exciting, and I'm doing whatever I can to have success.
Awesome.
Well, you're definitely with a good group,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's tremendous.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I fortunately I knew someone on the team, Nicole Condo, and she's been a great shoulder to lean on and ear to talk to any issue that I have, and she's a big deciding factor to go with that team, because I knew I could call her up anytime. And the rest of my team, after meeting them, they're a great team, and they're always there for any type of support.
Sure.
I mean, our text exchange, our email exchanges, it's always, not every day, but for the most part, several times a week, where people are asking advice or opinions on certain things, and everyone's right away texting back, and it's a great feeling knowing, especially for a new career, that I have that support.
That's great.
Excellent.
Well,
hey, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for coming on. This was sort of
awesome.
You've been our first sports figure to grace us on Light Beer, Dark Money. And thanks so much for coming on, and for being a great coach as well.
Well, thank you. Sorry if I talked too long.
No, you've been great. And
you're the guy who's supposed to be the talking. We're just testing.
We're just here. And just remember that this country and this podcast was founded on faith, freedom, and free enterprise. And thanks for listening to Light Beer, Dark Money.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.